Alright, this is going to be my first review of the Zenesis Standard. Alright, and for starters, the Zenesis Standard is a 18650 Genesis hybrid, meaning that it's a rebuildable atomizer and a tube mod, all built into one package. And the Zenesis Standard is made out of implant grade stainless steel, meaning that the steel that the tube of the mod is made out of in the top cap is the exact same steel that if you were to get a surgical implant put in, say you break a bone and they need to reinforce it, they would use the same steel. So it's extremely high quality steel, and the quality of the steel and the attention to detail there is reflected throughout the entire mod from every minute detail. And really, I got this mod not wanting to like it. I have a katana, and I would be really defensive of my katana, claiming that, oh, Genesis mods, same shit, 2 posts, a hole for your wick, tube, button, vapor. But Zen really went out of his way in, I guess, the design features and the overall construction of the Zenesis to really put it in a league of its own. And yeah, so back to the materials. I know that the tank is fused quartz, so it's not polycarbonate like on the Katana or the Orion, or Pyrex like on the Hellfire, but rather it's fused quartz, so it's essentially the same material that a high-end watch crystal is made out of. And I guess the pros and the cons. The pros being that it's beautiful. It's like perfectly see-through, looks just like glass, doesn't get cloudy, and you can use your cinnamon or heavy citrus juices without it cracking. There's no flavor leaching from the polycarbonate because it's just I'm assuming a fairly dense, brittle material that the flavors won't leach from. But then the downside to it is I've heard that they're extremely inclined to cracking, which of course polycarbonate tanks can crack as well, and obviously so can Pyrex, but I've heard these are especially brittle, and even like a fall from standing to falling on a tabletop is enough to crack the tank. And I think they're $10 to replace, but at least they're readily available, unlike the tanks on the Orion and the Katana, where unless you're going to try and hit up POC in fucking Croatia, you're going to need to get involved in a co-op or buy like 25 feet of polycarbonate from Europe for those metric sizes and cut it down yourself and then flame polish it yourself, and it's a real fucking hassle. So instead, you can just order one, a replacement tank, or replace any other part that you need, including the switch magnets, O-rings, post screws, wick insulator, even top caps with different strengths of draw, from tight to open to, I think they have a variable draw coming in May or June, all from our relatively local Rochester, New York. And so the fact that it's made here in America and all the replacement parts are available from an American vendor, that alone sets it apart from virtually every other Genesis atomizer on the market today. I think maybe the Scuba Gen's made in America, and that's all I can really think of. So that's a huge plus in my book, regardless of the construction of the mod or the performance. Made in America, American surgical steel, fused quartz. The materials that go into the mod are just truly tip-top. Now, next I'll go into a little bit of the construction itself, and I'll start with the button or the switch. So it's 3 parts. There's this top housing, which has the knurling on it, and that includes the threads and the Delrin insert. Then you have your post, which is a little Phillips head screw, and the button itself, which has a slight bevel around the edge. And I know a lot of people, including myself, are having some slight issues with the switches. I know people are misfiring, arcing, and it's kind of a pain in the ass, but after a little fiddling with it, changing around the washers a bit, I finally have it down perfect so it doesn't arc and it never misfires, so it's pretty perfect. The only thing that you need to make sure to do is to apply pressure not only up but to the side, because in order for a circuit to be made between the posts and the battery, the battery and the post on the button need to ground against the side of the mod, meaning the outer housing. So the center housing needs to grind against it essentially in order for it to make contact. And before I go any further with my review, I need to make it clear that I don't have magnets in my switch yet. Guy who I got my Zen from, and I actually got it on a trade on the classifieds on ECF, he broke his magnets, and I guess that's another issue that I've heard with the Zens, and one of the few, is that it uses ceramic magnets rather than rare earth magnets, which I believe are a little bit less resistant in terms of like mechanical resistance, how much effort it takes to push, but they're more brittle, like the polycarbonate, or like the fused quartz tank. So other than that, I know that they work well. I have magnets in other mechanical mods that I own, and I know that magnets, you have metal making contact with metal, whereas metal making contact with a spring, and springs can limit the current that goes through, and thus limiting the voltage and ultimately limiting the performance of the mod. So magnets are a huge plus, and they're a stock feature with the Zenesis Standard and the Mini. And another gripe I have with the Switch is the fact that it doesn't have a locking ring on it. So here we can see you just have the knurling. If it'll autofocus, which it never seems to want to. There we go. It's just the switch and the knurled ring to connect it all. Whereas on my Katana, for instance, there is a locking ring so it doesn't fire in your pocket by accident. And in this position it's locked. Screw the ring, and now it is ready to fire. So kind of an issue. The fix from Zen, from what I've heard, is okay, so it's in your pocket. You press the button, it will fire. You turn the knurling half a turn, it won't fire. And what's also noteworthy is that even with a full 5 milliliter tank and the top cap and a drip tip on there, and our screw in firing position, I can rest it down on a surface face up and it won't fire. And I actually need to apply a good amount of force to get it to fire. So pocket friendly, probably not. Just today I left it in my pocket with the switch uncovered, but just for that reason I have my nice 64 ring gauge cigar case that I carry my mods around in, but it's not really a huge issue. And for the size, it's a good, say, 8 inches long. I can't imagine most people would be carrying this around in their pocket, though. I mean, I've been known to carry around a dual 18650 Big Moto Odysseus around, so maybe I'm just talking out my ass here, but. Alright, and then moving on to the rest of the construction. Unlike the Katana, where the battery tube is removable, the battery tube on the Zenesis Standard and Minis is one piece with the post and the tank, so you can't unthread it right here. It's all fused in one part, which is nice. It makes the mod feel sturdy, it doesn't rattle, battery fits nice and tight in there, and it also makes disassembly of the tank much easier. And as for the center connector, or the positive connector inside the tank, it's just one less thing for people to fiddle with and break. I don't know if you can see that in there, but there is a little Allen wrench hole which I presume locks the post in the positive post. And so that's that for the positive connector. And as for the post in the center channel, unlike the Katana, it uses a single post design, meaning that the post in the center, there's only one of them obviously, and that handles so the positive post runs down an insulated channel on the inside, and the grounded post merely screws into the top cap assembly, and it grounds against the surface that it screws into and then throughout the rest of the post. Meaning that you get smallest surface area and volume of post running through your channel, so you can have a smaller tank with more volume, in short. And also I guess it's a little bit cleaner of a setup than using two posts. It's easier to disassemble, it's easier to take your tank off, and it's just easier. So that's that. And also on the Zenesis Standard and Mini, they're all engraved with serial numbers on the post. I don't know if you can see, but mine is number 0078. It's from the March pre-orders. And then the other engraving on the Zen is on the top cap, and it is Zen's name with a little tilde after it. There we go. And I believe both are laser inscribed or laser etched, and not true deep engravings like those on the GGTS. But because of the machined finish on these mods, and it's not high gloss, obviously I can't really see myself polishing it, besides for maybe a wipe down with a microfiber cloth, so I can't really see myself wiping them off anytime soon. They look good. They're aesthetically pleasing. I wish that they'd be a little bit darker so as to contrast a little bit stronger with the finish on the mod, but I'm content, and I have respect for Zen for not really trying to put a huge label on his mod. Like, it's subtle, it's elegant, and it's beautiful in its own regard without any extra ostentatious add-ons to it. Alright, and then moving up, the airflow hole I believe is 1/16 of an inch, whereas on the Katana I think they come 3/64 of an inch, I want to say, stock, and I have mine modded to 5/64 of an inch. So this one right here, as it stands, is around 1 3/4 millimeters in diameter, and it's more than enough airflow. And this is the open draw cap, and it doesn't feel too airy, it doesn't feel too tight. Flavor is good, vapor is excellent. That's that. And then finally, the drip tip hole. I know a big issue with a lot of the Genesis mods out there, especially some of the early series like the Line, the Genesis Mini and Maxi, the Katana. Most drip tips won't fit in that top drip tip hole, and so far I've found maybe 3 or 4 out of my 25-30 drip tips that won't fit it. But all of the ones that I care to use, including my blown glass trippy tips, my blown glass tips from the esig.com, as well as my Super T whistle tips, Super T, whatever, the stainless steel drip tips from Super T all fit, and I think I have 5 of those that I've tested. So yeah, and then let's move on to the posts. So like I was saying, we have our center post in the middle, which runs down the channel, and if you compare it to almost any other Genesis style atomizer, you'll notice that both posts are kind of oddly sized and oddly placed. When I first saw pictures of an installed coil in the Zenesis, I was a little alarmed that the distance between the grounded post, which is the shorter one, and the wick was so far, because I figured that I would get hot spots no matter what in just that distance. But so far in my experience, I've had hot spots like maybe right after I install the coil, or if it goes like bone dry. But other than that, it doesn't get hot enough, or it doesn't get red at least. And if you can see mine, it sits, the lowest wrap of the coil going from the ground to the wick sits almost touching the base, and it gives me the most space to wrap my coil. And right now I have 3 wraps of 32 AWG Canthal A1, which is probably the industry standard at this point for Genesis mods. And then the top post, the positive post, the screw head for it, another thing that was kind of alarming to me, because I know in my katana I have to really finesse the distance between my wick and the both positive and ground posts, because if I don't, I get hot spots right there, and as it sits, it's really perfect. And I know Zen has, like, every design feature as far as the post has been totally premeditated and planned out by Zen. And if you notice, when you have your top cap on, you cannot see straight into the center channel of the post, or the post assembly, whatever you want to call it, because it's blocked by that screw head. And what that does is it creates almost a wind tunnel of sorts within the post assembly and the wick that basically, based on your orientation of the air hole to the wick, provides the densest vapor, and thus the most vapor production, the best flavor, and the best throat hit. So that's that. And that's pretty much all I have to say as far as the construction of the mod, though I really do need to point out that all of the seams between the tank and the top cap, as well as the tank and the tube, the placement of the O-rings, the center post, like every little seam on the mod is perfect. And I especially want to point out the switch, because even though I don't totally love the functionality of the switch, I must say that it sits perfectly on the mod. And compared to my katana, which I'll bring up right here, you can see the threads don't line up that well. Let's see. Come on, autofocus. Yeah, anyway, like, you can really yeah, there we go. You can see that it's not flush, the base of the button with the base of the tube. There's extra slack in the tube for the battery, and it just feels shitty. Like, I really like all of the threads to match up perfectly on my mods. I like to feel like secure and like stable and screwing in every thread, and like when threads catch or burn or just don't go on or sit like wobbly in place, it just feels like a piece of shit, and it just makes me not want the mod. And I really need to say that all of the little seams and threads on the Zenesis Standard, I'd say they are on par, if not exceed, those on my GGTSs and GGTBs, and maybe not exceed. They're both at an equal level of perfection, but I think the Zen has a much smoother feel to it than the GGs, because the threads are just so thick and feel so durable. Like, they have to be a solid millimeter in depth from the peak of the thread to the valley of it. Like, it's just a solid feeling mod. Alright, and I'll go a little bit over the performance. As with any Genesis atomizer or stainless steel mesh employing atomizer, the flavor is going to be fantastic, and that transcends into the Zenesis. The flavor is fucking perfect. From the very second I filled up my tank, flavor was on point. Break-in time was maybe 5 minutes. I wasn't there sitting with my fucking mod upside down for a half hour, burning through tank after tank of juice to get it to wick. Perfect right from the get-go. And a huge part of that is Zen does include his own pre-oxidized stainless steel mesh wicks. He gives you a little length of Canthal, which I've wrapped up here for my little go bag kit. And he even sends it with a coil installed. I think from what I've heard from most people, he's sending them with either 5 or 6 wrap coils, but I prefer a much lower coil, usually 3. Sometimes I'll go 4 wraps of intertwined 32 gauge dual coil, which I've promised Zen I wouldn't use in his mods for some safety reason or another, amperage draw and all that horseshit, but 3 reps works fine. I'll show you a little how it hips, but here it is, Zenesis Standard. And this is 3 reps, 400 mesh, and I think it's a 70-30 or 60-40 PG/VG juice. It's a juicy watermelon from Pink Spot Vapors. That's all. Really, I don't have much more else to say about the Zenesis, but I'll leave it on a note about the customer service, and I must say that Zen has been a pleasure to deal with on the forums. Maybe not a pleasure. It's kind of a grumpy old bastard sometimes, but I don't really blame him or hold him to it, just because I know he's so fucking busy making these mods. Over the weekend he put out, I think he said 60 PVs, and over Labor Day weekend, or Labor Day? Memorial Day, there we go. What the fuck do I know? And he's a busy guy, and he really puts a lot of passion and effort into making his mods perfect and making the vaping experience for everyone who uses them perfect. And it really reflects in the mods. And like I said, the magnets that I had, or that originally came with it, broke when I got it. PM Zen, getting new magnets tomorrow, I think, or whenever he sends out my Zenesis AYS. Yeah, great dude to work with. His Zen sub forum on ECF isn't really my cup of tea. I feel like not a lot of valuable knowledge gets shared on there. I much prefer the Katana thread, but to each his own. I'm just not into the 25,000-30,000 post 2,000 page nonsense forum where it's hard to find information, but that's just me. But I guess I'll leave it on that note. Hope everyone enjoys the video, and that is the Zenesis Standard.